There was a rhythm to everyday life in 1960s America, a soft, unspoken beat that carried people through each day. Mornings began not with alarms, but with sunlight spilling through floral curtains and the gentle hum of a percolator on the kitchen counter. Mothers tied their aprons, fathers straightened their ties, and the world outside felt calm, almost innocent, untouched by the rush that defines life today. If you remember those simpler times when happiness came easy and life felt slower, hit that like button and let's step back into a world that truly knew how to live. The day started early in the suburbs. You could hear screen doors creak open, the faint echo of footsteps on front porches, and a friendly "morning" shared across neatly trimmed lawns. Kids raced down sidewalks with lunchboxes swinging, while yellow school buses rolled through neighborhoods that smelled of fresh-cut grass. Fathers walked to their cars in crisp white shirts, briefcases in hand, as mothers waved from the doorway, smiling like it was the best day of the week. Inside the house, the radio played softly, maybe the Supremes or the Beach Boys, and somewhere between the coffee pot and the morning paper, the day found its balance. There was no rush to scroll, no urge to compare. People were simply present, and in that presence, happiness was effortless. In 1960s America, every small moment carried meaning. A mother ironing clothes by the window wasn't just doing chores, she was creating warmth, routine, and love. A father fixing a loose cabinet door wasn't just repairing wood, he was building a life of quiet stability. Even the sound of clinking dishes after breakfast felt like part of the home's heartbeat. When afternoon came, the streets grew still. Housewives chatted over fences, milkmen made their rounds, and the postman's footsteps were a daily comfort. Television was still a treat, not a background noise. People didn't chase entertainment, they earned it. And when a family finally gathered for dinner, laughter wasn't something planned, it just happened. There was a kind of magic in that predictability. The same road to work, the same neighbors, the same meals. Yet no one felt trapped. Life wasn't about escape, it was about belonging. Everyone knew where they were meant to be, and somehow, that was enough. Looking back now, those days feel like a gentle melody we can still hear if we listen closely. Before screens took over our mornings, before busyness became a badge of honor, there was a time when happiness lived in simple routines, in the steady rhythm of ordinary days. Because back then, life didn't need to be exciting to be beautiful. It just needed to be real. Evenings in 1960s America carried a quiet kind of magic, a moment when the whole world seemed to slow down and return home. The day's noise faded with the sunset, and living rooms began to glow with the soft flicker of black and white television screens. Somewhere down the street, a screen door slammed, a dog barked, and the faint smell of home-cooked supper drifted through the air. Families gathered, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Fathers came home from work with loosened ties and tired smiles. Mothers wiped flour from their hands, setting the table with care. Kids washed up quickly because dinner wasn't just a meal, it was an event. The sound of laughter mixed with the clinking of silverware, and every story shared at that table became a thread in the fabric of family life. In those days, happiness wasn't complicated. It lived in the closeness of people who simply showed up for each other. A meal wasn't eaten in silence, and the only distractions were the conversations themselves. No one scrolled through screens or checked messages. The only thing glowing in that room was the television set in the corner, patiently waiting for the family to finish dinner. After supper, kids would sprawl across the floor, waiting for their favorite shows like Leave It to Beaver, The Andy Griffith Show, I Love Lucy. Parents sat side by side on the couch, sharing a quiet laugh at the same joke. Everyone watched together. One TV, one channel, one moment of joy shared by the entire household. And somehow that togetherness made every story on the screen feel like it belonged to them too. Outside, the world was calm. Streetlights hummed softly, and neighbors waved from their porches. Children played one last round of hide-and-seek before the evening chill crept in. There were no constant notifications, no pressure. There was a special kind of joy in 1960s America, the kind that didn't need to be planned, purchased, or posted. Happiness came wrapped in the smallest of moments, the kind that slipped by quietly but left their mark forever. It lived in the laughter of kids chasing the ice cream truck down sunlit streets, in the chime of coins dropped into a jukebox, and in the sweet scent of fresh popcorn drifting from a small-town theater on a Friday night. Back then, people didn't search for excitement. They stumbled into it. Teenagers gathered at diners with chrome counters and neon lights, sharing milkshakes and stories that would soon become memories. A single song playing on the jukebox could fill the entire room with energy. A shy smile across the booth meant more than 100 texts ever could. Life was slower, softer, but full of meaning. On summer afternoons, families packed picnic baskets and headed for the park. Kids rolled down grassy hills, fathers grilled hot dogs, and mothers laughed in their sun hats, watching it all like a scene from a postcard. The world felt wide, yet safe, big enough to dream, but small enough to belong. And when the sun began to set, no one wanted to go home. There was always time for one last story, one more spark of laughter before the stars appeared. For teenagers, happiness often meant freedom, not in big ways, but in little ones. A long drive down an open road with the windows down and the radio playing the Beach Boys. A slow dance in a gym decorated with paper hearts. A letter slipped into a locker that made an entire week brighter. Those small pleasures stitched together the fabric of youth, unfiltered, unhurried, unforgettable. In small towns, Saturday nights carried their own quiet excitement. Movie theaters came alive with couples holding hands, the smell of buttered popcorn and the soft flicker of light bouncing off smiling faces. The world outside faded, and for 2 hours everyone escaped into the same story. When the lights came back on, laughter echoed through parking lots filled with shiny Chevrolets and bright neon signs. But maybe the truest happiness came in the simplest places. The front porch swing, the crackling sound of a vinyl record, or the laughter of neighbors sharing lemonade on a summer evening. People didn't need much to feel alive. They just needed each other and the time to enjoy it. Looking back now, those moments seem almost too perfect to have been real. Yet they were. Ordinary, fleeting, and utterly human. That's what made the 1960s so special. The magic wasn't in what people had. It was in how deeply they felt the small things. A shared laugh, a good song, the warmth of sunlight on the kitchen wall. In the end, those small pleasures built a lifetime of happiness. And even today, when we close our eyes and remember, it's those simple moments that make us smile the most. In 1960s America, time had a different rhythm, a gentle pace that allowed people to actually feel life as it happened. Days didn't rush. They unfolded, quietly and beautifully, like pages in a slow-turning book. The morning sun seemed to linger longer, the evenings stretched wider, and somehow everyone had time to breathe. There was no constant hurry, no buzzing notifications demanding attention, only the sound of the world moving at its own calm speed. Letters arrived by hand, not by screen. Each envelope carried not just words, but anticipation, a small excitement that made the waiting worthwhile. People wrote slowly, carefully, with real pens and real feelings. And when that letter finally came, it wasn't opened in a rush. It was read like something sacred, often twice, sometimes 3 times, because it meant something. Every connection did. Even entertainment moved slower. You'd wait all week for your favorite television show, counting down the days until Bonanza or The Twilight Zone flickered to life on the living room set. Families didn't binge watch, they gathered. The act of waiting was part of the experience. That patience built excitement, and that excitement made every moment feel special. Summer days seemed endless back then. Kids spent them outside until the streetlights came on. They rode their bikes without worrying about time, building forts, chasing fireflies, and letting their imaginations stretch as far as the sky. Parents didn't need to check on them every minute. They just knew the world was safe enough for childhood to bloom freely. And when those tired, sun-kissed kids finally came home, it wasn't to screens or distractions, but to the comfort of a home-cooked meal and familiar laughter. Life had fewer choices, but somehow more meaning. People didn't rush through meals, they savored them. Conversations weren't background noise, they were the main event. Even silence had weight, the kind that made you notice the ticking clock on the mantel or the sound of rain tapping against the window. Sundays were sacred in a quiet way. Families dressed in their best clothes, went to church, and came home to big lunches that lasted all afternoon. Afterward, people sat on porches, reading newspapers or simply watching the world go by. Neighbors waved, kids played catch. Time wasn't something to beat, it was something to live alongside. Looking back, those slower days weren't just about the pace, they were about presence. People were fully there wherever they were. They didn't rush to the next moment because this one was enough. Maybe that's why old photographs from the 1960s feel so warm, not because of the color or the film grain, but because the people in them were truly living in that second. Today, when life feels like a blur of deadlines and screens, those memories remind us of a beautiful truth. Happiness once lived in stillness. The world didn't move slower because it had to. It moved slower because it was allowed to. And in that quiet space between one heartbeat and the next, life felt perfectly complete. In 1960s America, the heart of life beat inside the home. Not in the rush of the city, not in the noise of machines, but right there, between the clatter of dishes, the hum of the radio, and the quiet laughter of a family simply living together. Homes back then weren't just walls and roofs, they were sanctuaries of warmth, built on love, routine, and care. Step inside a kitchen from those days and you'd feel it immediately. The smell of fresh pies cooling on the counter, the rhythmic sound of a washing machine spinning in the background, the radio softly playing Patsy Cline or the Everly Brothers. The air itself seemed warmer, as if every moment was wrapped in gentleness. Mothers moved through those spaces like quiet anchors, cooking, cleaning, caring, not because they had to, but because it meant something. They were the keepers of calm in a world that was beginning to change. Fathers, too, carried their own kind of love, steady and unspoken. They fixed radios that had lost their sound, painted fences on Saturday mornings, and taught their children how to tie knots or ride bikes. Their affection wasn't always in words, but in presence, being there, day after day, no matter what. It was a kind of love that didn't need to be performed. It just existed, constant and dependable. Children found their worlds in the smallest corners, building forts from blankets, drawing chalk lines on driveways, and playing with toys that didn't light up or talk back. Happiness was homemade, and imagination filled every gap that technology never had to. A cardboard box could be a spaceship, a backyard a whole universe. Evenings were sacred. The smell of supper floated through open windows, and one by one, lights flickered on across the neighborhood. Families gathered around the dinner table, not with phones, but with stories. Every laugh, every shared glance seemed to say, "We're here, together." And that simple truth was everything. In those homes, time didn't just pass, it lived. Each photo on the wall told a story. Each scratch on the table marked a memory. The world outside might have been changing fast, the cars, the fashion, the headlines, but inside those walls, life stayed warm, steady, and real. Because home wasn't a place, it was a feeling, a rhythm, a heartbeat that carried people through good days and bad. And though the decades have passed, that warmth still lingers in our memories, in the smell of old recipes, in the sound of vinyl crackling, in the way we still crave that same kind of peace. So tell me, if you could step back into one evening from your childhood home, just for a moment, what would you want to see again first? The kitchen light? Your parents' laughter? Or that quiet, safe feeling that told you everything was right in the world? Share it in the comments, because those stories are the heartbeat of what we've lost, and maybe what we still carry inside us.